So good afternoon. We will start now with three things. We'll make a little step back in terms of what we are trying to achieve and why we are all here today. And then we will review a little bit what has been discussed in short, because actually we have covered that in the previous session. And then finally we'll move to what's next and how we will continue. So that's how we will run the next 45 minutes. And so don't forget to add the words as commenting the 2 days. So it's an important moment. We've discussed yesterday that actually patient engagement is at a turning point. And a lot of things are moving in the right direction, and we still have to make a push. And so for quite a while, so it's not meant to be an exhaustive mapping of the environment. It's an illustration of the system more than an exhaustive mapping. And so basically, if you have looked at the system about patient engagement 4 or 5 years ago, you would have seen something like that, where actually all the players will have different perspectives, different opinions, different tools, if they had tools. And so actually it would not have been, it's a random system in scientific terms. And so it was not really efficient, and there were no conditions for patient engagement to happen. And so what we have been doing for several years, and it's now possible to meet all together for 2 days like we are doing now, is that we have been trying to connect this, to build from each other, not to compete with each other, not to work in silos, to continue the work that people have started, because even today, if we are launching something new, it's probably not new and it's probably out of date in 6 months from now. So all of this needs to continue. And what we are doing really now is that trying to move as one. And the fact that we in this room move as one means that when we go back in the mothership, we actually are much more powerful. We have contract templates that have been approved already by 10 other organizations and 20 patient organizations. And that's the kind of argument and like the force we bring together when we move as one. And we have less disruption and more efficiency in terms of making patient engagement progress. So what we are trying to do is, in this room, is to harmonize all of that. And not all the players are keen to co-create, and they are not all keen to collaborate. But actually, I think we have a pretty impressive crowd. Look at the room, look behind for the ones that are in the front. It's a pretty impressive crowd. We have people from everywhere from the globe, from plenty of stakeholder groups. So it's really something that we could not have imagined 4 or 5 years ago. And I think so that the result of physically getting in the same room for 2 days and to share as we have been sharing is really an achievement. And so I think that's when we try to say we want to co-create, it's not just because we have wishy-washy people that like to discuss, and it's because actually the way to succeed in making patient engagement happen in a meaningful and systematic way. And so that's the first message here, is that we are more than just a consortium altogether or a group of people that come and have discussions. We have been extremely concrete in terms of what needs to be done, how we will do it, and who will do what in the next months. So now we leave it to Nicola to kind of package a little bit how we have done for the last 2 days.
Thank you, Nicola. First of all, I'd just like to pass on the apologies from Magda from FPEOF, my co-lead in the Paradigm Project. She has a very good reason for leaving early. Her son is graduating later this afternoon, so she left with a very excited look on her face. So indeed. So I'd just like to go back to yesterday lunchtime and walk you through some of the key highlights that we've enjoyed together. Magda actually used the analogy of raising a child in a village at the opening session, which I think we all identified with. But reflecting back on some of the discussions and ideas that have been expressed over the last few hours, I think we need to actually add quite an important word: raising a child well in a village. Because I think we've talked a lot about inclusivity, equality, and dignity in patient engagement, and we've also talked a lot about quality improvement. The introductory session was focused very much on new culture, on co-creation, and I think we've managed to achieve that very much over the last few hours and couple of days. Matthew alluded to scarce resources, which means we have to align. There should be no duplication. He said every hour, every euro counts. But actually we need to find a better way of communicating the synergies and symbiosis between Paradigm, PFMD, and UPATI. I think we've made a huge amount of progress within this open forum, but we need to continue on that trajectory. There's a desire, and Nicola said it very, very eloquently yesterday, a desire to make patient engagement the norm. And this open forum has really given us the opportunity to cooperate on a different and deeper level. The panel that we held with regulators and HTA experts highlighted a number of different points. We got the insights from each panelist about what's happening in their environment and the appetite for change. I think one important aspect, and Natalie raised this from the European Medicines Agency, the importance of taking stock, not simply doing more, but actually stepping back and looking at what is the best methodology, where should different methodologies apply in different contexts, really understanding where patient involvement really matters and doing it. I think another important aspect that came out of the panel session discussion was the fact that education is really important. We talk a lot about patient education, a lot about educating within the industry environment, but Sandra actually highlighted that HTA experts and regulators also need to educate themselves about patient engagement so that they can really understand and internalize the conceptual framework of patient engagement and also be part of that cultural change. The question, should patient engagement become mandatory, was also posed, but actually it was also stated that we need clear messaging and clear guidance from the authorities that this is actually expected. Resource requirements was also a topic, both the human and financial resources in the patient organisations world, but also within the agencies. How do we actually use the resources best? How do we prioritise the data that is needed and can be used? Notwithstanding that discussion, I think the issue of compensating patients for their expertise and knowledge is really a no-brainer. We need to do that. We need to commit to do that. The concept of early involvement was also raised, and the risks around not ensuring that very early involvement in relation to suboptimal innovation with the obvious negative impact on patients at the end of the day, but also showcasing success. When we get it right, when there is good practice, how do we unpack why that happened? How do we actually look at replication, scale up, and leapfrogging? And we don't perhaps do that sufficiently. And again, we've got fantastic platforms, this environment, to actually home in on that in the future. The panelists sort of projected themselves 5 years' time, and I think they all echoed that normalisation of patient engagement is their aspiration, using and applying relevant methodology and tools, and the kind of idea that we're already on that journey and we will reach the destination. I'm not going to mention Maya's excellent speech this morning. It's probably still very much in your mind. Find Me Cure, it was both memorable and passionate, but I just wanted to give a few sort of highlights and ideas from the workshops that we held yesterday and this morning. Stuart's workshop focused on gaps in patient engagement, how to prioritise these gaps, doing a stress test on the landscape to understand what's happening out there, and distilling this to feed into the work that we're doing on the Paradigm Toolbox, and I'll come on to that in a couple of seconds. Sophie talked about the online session that we held yesterday afternoon, focusing very much on communication and cultural change. And I think the group was very keen to really look deeply at understanding reluctance, the theory of change, the whole idea that actually the status quo for everybody is always easier, and how we actually address that. Actually transforming from KPIs to shifting mindsets, hearts and minds, and communicating the real added value of patient engagement. The session homed in on the importance of strong leadership, The idea of thinking big, but little incremental changes are also really super important. Sophie also talked about the immediacy, responding to real needs out there and giving people relevant resources in an instantaneous way that they can use super easily. That is really the clue. Chi was responsible for the session on quality guidance, and we homed in on 3 case studies from industry, from the Parkinson's disease community, and from a country, Denmark, essentially. And shared purpose, interestingly enough, emerged as the most important criterion, because all of them are key, all of the quality criteria are really key, but actually shared purpose frames everything, and everything should actually flow from there. Other key aspects from that workshop was, again, strong leadership as a driver, and capability and capacity building. Jan talked about the working session on legal agreements, drawing on the guiding principles that have been developed by the We Can network, and the workshop focused on a scenario based on a patient providing expert advice around adherence to a company and the contract that would entail. And the working session really looked at the contract both from the perspective of a patient and the perspective of a compliance and legal department within a company, and looked at what worked and what actually didn't work. We also talked about the reference contracts that have been developed in the context of the We Can project. It was clear from Jan's feedback that, is legal agreement that important to patients? Of course it is. It has to be their business. It has to be their thing. It needs to be co-owned and co-created by patients. And the real importance of trade associations in actually messaging to their members about the importance of legal agreements, the importance of moving forward constructively there, was also raised. Jan made a nice link with the collaborative work that is happening in the US on fair market value and the calculator around fair market value, and the fact that PFMD is coordinating this work, bringing in FPA's patient think tank work on all of this. So again, we all move forward together. And there was a dedicated workshop on fair market value this morning that Elena from the National Health Council in the US actually led, making, again, it very clear that we're working hand in glove on all of these issues. That workshop looked at refining the activity list within the calculator on fair market value, looked at some of the ethical issues that need to be addressed, the definition of a patient's experience in the sphere. And Elena, and I think we all kind of related to this, she really stressed that human factor and also simply common sense. Paul led the metrics workshop in his typically entertaining way, looking at a metrics framework implemented in industry, the experience of evaluation and metrics in the European Medicines Agency, and the experience in the context of community advisory boards. We had great software, the Menti really worked. We looked at the complexity of metrics and whether we should actually simplify it without dumbing it down. We looked at the issues around survey fatigue, etc., etc. I won't go into too much detail, but I think one takeaway that Paul shared with us before lunch was the emphasis on qualitative metrics, really around trust, education, and motivation. This really came out of the workshop very strongly. And then finally, Ingrid's workshop focusing very much on the toolbox and some of the components we need to think about regarding the toolbox. Of course, a lot of work has already happened within the relevant work package, thinking about how we need to develop the things that are obvious, linking to some of the things that I spoke about earlier that has been addressed in the other workshops. But what came across very strongly in the context of this feedback was the need for a matchmaking platform. UPATI started to explore this, and it's really important that we address this robustly in the context of Paradigm. The notion of patients as authors or co-authors of publications and how we can really facilitate that. In the relationship building, the fundamental importance of the independence of patients and patient organisations came across very strongly. And then the starter kit, the importance of the starter kit to get people on that road on patient engagement, but again thinking about inclusivity and not leaving anybody behind. that was kind of an overview from my perspective. I've left a lot out, but please don't worry, because there will be a very complete report that will go into much more granularity, and you'll be able to find your ideas, your thoughts, your reflections of the last couple of days in that report. Thank you very much.
So I know Daniel Schryver from Janssen and leading patient engagement on their side in Europe will actually give us a little perspective from industry.
Thank you. We should find an industry representative whose name is Nicola, then it wouldn't be so different. Yeah, I have to give the industry perspective. Of course, I also want to give my personal perspective, and I liked the request I got. My request was give the role we should play in industry, and English language is bizarre, because I wasn't sure whether they wanted me to tell what the industry should be playing as a role, or we should be playing in industry. And so I'm going to start with a more personal note, and it's so addressed to the Ingrids and the Thierrys and the Pauls in the room, because it's our role in the industry to change things. And I think that's a very, very heavy burden that we have on our shoulders, and we can only hope that Paradigm can help, because what it is about in the industry, it's about culture change. That word has fallen a lot. And so what we need to do is go back and do some change management, because being in this room for me feels like being on my Facebook page. I can say what I want in the hall. Everybody always gives a little like or a little heart because we all agree. The problem is when you go back to your daily business, the people next to you says, where have you been the last 2 days? Or, and who do you think is going to pay for all these things? Or worse, why should we do that? So even in the best companies, you would still have some work to do. I think nobody can say that we're completely on the top right there. And that is our work. We need to make sure that patient engagement gets systematized. It becomes a standard operating procedure. It's integrated. Everybody who works in the industry knows you have to be compliant. Nobody says why or how much is it going to cost. It's just an evidence. And we have a department that checks if we are compliant. We should become the department that checks where you really have everything done according to what the new paradigm should be. And that's why I think paradigm is extremely useful, because the colleagues will always ask the why and the benchmark. What they want is to say, what are the others doing? What's the standard? What is now the normal? And the new normal, we can work together on that. That's why we're sitting here. The new normal, we don't need to invent it. It's co-created with you all here in the room. So I think that is our task. That's the we in the industry. Of course, I'm not going to stay there. The industry has a role to play. And before I come to the industry, a pledge to the HTA bodies, the payers, the regulators in the room, and beyond. All this is very nice, but if this is not going to be rewarded, if this is not going to be recognized, it will be in vain. At the end, there should be a collaborative approach, and so there is also a need for reward on good practice. The better patient-engaged product should also be the product that gets the best reward. That's my personal belief. And then a pledge to the patient organizations here. I think it's extremely important that you understand that when paradigm becomes a new paradigm, the requests on your shoulders will multiply by 10, by 20, by 50. So it's a pledge to use PFMD, UPATI, or whatever tools are out there to train, to increase expertise, but please do not forget to keep also a huge fundament in society. Have a lot of members. It's extremely important to be representative and to have members, because if this is the new paradigm, well, business will take over. And business will say, we can find the patients. We can give you data. But it's not only about data. I'm a big advocate, and so I'm advocating also for advocacy. You have a bigger role to play than just being a furnisher of data. So please, another pledge to the patient organizations. And then finally, of course, it's about the role of the industry. If you look at this timeline, everybody knows this. It's been used by PFMD, by UPATI, by many organizations. It's a standard. That is all the places, moments where patient voice should be heard. Well, it's very easy. We are everywhere as an industry. So if we are not making this happen throughout our own company with all the parts, then this is not going to fly either. We're pretty successful when it comes to R&D. I think clinical trials review, I think it has become more standard. But here in the room, I do not see many people from health economics and market access, although it's not an unimportant element of the way we bring products to market. So I think we need, again, to go back to our companies and make sure we work together, first internally, but also together, and try to use what exists. New contracts from Weekend, for example, they should be a standard that FPA offers so that it becomes an FPA standard, and there is no discussion anymore. It makes it also easier for the smaller companies. Now, I am here, I'm extremely happy to be on my Facebook page, but I love what I'm doing, and I hope everybody has the same feeling, that we have data that shows, we know that we are doing the right thing. We have data that shows that if you partner directly, so if you have the patient voice in your R&D, you will deliver better products sooner. We also know that people who are involved in making the solution for their disease or the condition they live with, they are better users of that product, they will be having better outcomes. And healthcare is about outcomes. Let's not forget that. We are paying for outcomes, we will be paid for outcomes, so we should all try to have the best one. That collaborative approach, that new paradigm, the only thing why we are sitting together here is because we are all believers that this is going to bring better outcomes. And me, as an individual, as a taxpayer, I am a convinced person that this is also going to make healthcare more sustainable. So altogether, we are not part of the problem, we are part of the solution. Thank you.
So we've worked for 2 days, or nearly 2 days, and fortunately or unfortunately, it depends, but it's only the beginning. So there is plenty of work that has started several years ago. Paradigm is ongoing for, I think, 13 months or something like that now. There is still a lot of work to do. And the good thing is now that we have some assets to continue to work. So there is the one, and so Daniel is commenting on the fact that in his own organization, like a lot of people, whether it's industry or other stakeholders, they are suffering or lonely, or, sorry, I exaggerate maybe.
I'm not suffering.
They have hard work actually converting and changing the behaviors and the culture internally. And that's in all stakeholder groups. And actually having a place like this one when you can have your Facebook friends, and you can also have a drink. There is a drink, by the way, at the end of the day. You can even drink wine on your Facebook page. Actually, this is a first achievement. So this network that we have is pretty unique. And several people have told me that doesn't exist anywhere else. So I have no proof point to actually say the opposite, and I know it's pretty rare, and I think we should be really enjoying that network that we have. The second thing is that more than a network, it's an organized network. And so I'm using a slide that I've used in PFMD, but it's completely valid for Paradigm, it's completely valid for UPAT too. Actually, we have a process to bring things together, to look at what exists, discuss together, co-create how we will move from that, what needs to be done and how it has to be done. From there, we can kickstart projects because in the network, we have the resources from all stakeholders with all expertise. And from there, we can actually build a tool, test them, and bring them to maturity. And that's a very good news, because if we have even a very small initiative somewhere, we as a network can take it, make it continue, and all of this become very sustainable instead of duplicative and not efficient. And so that the second good news is that not only we have a network, but we have a network that knows how to work together and to be sustainable. So on the slide here, I'm showing a little bit how we came to maturity. So you see you had the horizontal slide that becomes vertical now, and you see how we have built from knowledge, analysis, surveys, how we build the foundation of some guidance that are founding principle for the future work in patient engagement, and how we can go to more granular how-to modules, for example, and how we can turn these how-to modules or the toolkit or whatever we call it, how we can turn that into a learning system or e-learning platform or face-to-face training. So all of that, again, exists, and we have a way to keep it sustainable and to make it exist and to make it accessible across the globe. And so for me, that's one of the key assets we have to move forward. So it's only the beginning, because actually we still have 3 working sessions on preclinical, clinical, and plain language summaries. In this case, it's plain language in a very large sense, so it's not only plain language summaries for clinical trial. It's actually for all communication and publications linked to health and how we could communicate to patients. So actually it's very close to the work that Ingrid has mentioned earlier today, and we are working together as well as part of the network, but the topic here is a little bit larger. And so that's what will be started now, but actually you see working groups on the screen that are open working groups. So you have an interest, you have an expertise to share, you want to co-create, actually you can contact the people here and you can join us at the end of the session to actually say, I want to be engaged and I want to co-create within these groups. So we have that, we have different platforms, but we all work together, and so moving as one is very important. And I would like to finish with how Magda started with the village elements. So I think we have an award for the best tweets, but she clearly has an award for the best expression for the 2 days. It takes a village to raise a child, but I think to build a village we need trust. And I've been extremely pleased by what I have seen for the last 2 days. The discussions extremely constructive. I have seen other groups where actually it's an opposition or not constructive. Here it was extremely constructive. Everybody brought something and everybody got something out of the discussion. And I think we could create a good sense of co-creation there. So for me, the trust we have is something that I'm pretty sure we will organize a third open forum, and that it will continue after. So I'm very pleased about that, and I will finish on that note.
So I just wanted to take a few more minutes of your time just to touch briefly on the wider landscape. My first reflection is that we're entering a brand new political environment. We have, for the first time, a healthcare professional as the Commission President. The Commissioner designate for Health is a well-known patient advocate, Stella Kyriakidis. In the mission letter that she's received from the President, it points very, very clearly to the importance of patient and citizens' involvement. And I believe we'll need to build the citizens' dimension in our future thinking. We've talked a lot about cultural change across all stakeholders. And this is starting, but we need to move much further, much faster, embracing and implementing important existing strategies that are now in place. With patient support, FPA has a patient engagement strategy. The Innovative Medicines Initiative has a patient engagement strategy. ISPOR, the International Society on Pharmacoeconomics and Outcome Research, has a patient engagement strategy. HTA International has a patient engagement strategy. I could go on. The strategies out there exist. And in fact, the work of PFMD, Paradigm and UPATI collectively can help to provide the glue that moves from simply having a strategy to real implementation. The other point I wanted to touch upon is new health partnerships. We know that IMI, the Innovative Medicines Initiative, will be succeeded by a new health partnership that will include, as well as medicines, digital, health data, medtech, social and systems innovation. I believe this is really, really good news for patients out there. But our community needs to be ahead of the curve. How do we actually embed patient engagement in digital health, in medtech? We're a long way from that actually being a workable dynamic, a workable relationship. And I feel there are many learnings from public-private partnerships in the medicine space and patient organisation, pharma and medicine regulators' experience in achieving strong ethical partnerships, despite obviously some of the bumps along the way. We also need to look at patient education and patient engagement on big data. And this is the rationale behind a new initiative that EPF is driving forward with other stakeholders, a multi-stakeholder initiative called Data Saves Lives, essentially looking at building confidence and trust in responsible data sharing. And of course, EPF will make sure that the right sort of links are made between Data Saves Lives and Paradigm, PFMD and UPATI. This is really key. Over the last couple of days, we've talked about patient engagement in the life cycle of medicines, but critically important also is patient involvement in health systems innovation and social innovation. One strong example here is social prescribing. And I really believe there's a huge opportunity for shared learning regarding patient engagement in medicines R&D and patient engagement in designing and strengthening health systems and services that make sense for patients. Both are really vital to ensure that we address in an inclusive and equitable way what really matters to patients at the end of the day. And if you're interested in this, then please look into the EPF Congress, which is taking place this November in Brussels, actually in this hotel. I think it will be another really rich and fertile learning space. What we're trying to do there is similar to what we're doing within Paradigm, acknowledging that there are ad hoc examples, real pearls of patient involvement in health systems, in health services. But again, it's too fragmented, it's too ad hoc, it's too piecemeal. We need to think about how to systemize that, how to structure that differently, because this is key not only for quality delivery, for patients, better outcomes, but also the sustainability of our health systems in the future. That's what the Congress will be all about, but we'll also, of course, use the opportunity of the new Commission and indeed the new regional director within the WHO, Hans Klug, who's one of the ambassadors to our event, to really embed patient involvement in the health policy environment at European level, at pan-European level, but also in a national context. EPF is working hard towards a blueprint on patient involvement in health, and this Congress will be really about a stepping stone towards that, hopefully with the engagement and involvement of many stakeholders. So you can see the parallels, you can see the nexus between patient involvement in the wider environment and patient engagement in the life cycle of medicines. And I think we need to move far and fast on both of those things. I'm going to stop now, but before I hand the floor back to Nicola, I'd like to just give a few thanks, I think well-deserved thanks, to the EPF team, Anya, Camila, Susanna, Adriana and Zil, to the PFMD team, Chi, Roxanne, Gulvish, and of course to the other drivers, thinkers behind making sure that this open forum has been so successful. Matthew from UPATI, Mathieu coordinating Paradigm, of course Nicola from PFMD. But perhaps most of all, I'd like to thank all of you, every single one of you in the room that have contributed, that have come, that have dedicated 2 days of your time to really lean in to patient involvement, patient engagement, and making this happen, not just in this wonderful room, but actually when we go home tomorrow morning, and how to take that much further. So a big, big thanks to all of you, speakers, panelists, and participants alike. Thank you very much.
Just to see the result, can we have the slides? What have you said? That's nice to see. Engaging as one of the biggest words. It's like for patient engagement, a very good sign. So thank you very much, everybody. And so don't forget there are ongoing sessions, 3 sessions now, and just after we still have a drink to digest and debrief, because what we will do is to ask all of you how you felt about the 2 days and how you would like the next one to be. So it's our platform to make patient engagement happen. You will have the opportunity to say what you need for the next time. So have a good day to finish and have a good sessions and see you soon. Bye-bye.